What's up, Totem Pole Nation? Welcome to a on-the-road version of Lambo and Matt's World of Sports. Today we are getting into the drama that is surrounding the Denver Broncos. Obviously, it has been a bumpy ride since Sean Payton and Russell Wilson have come together, and, it's been one thing after another. So we're going to get into the drama going on now. Obviously, the team and Russ are moving in different directions. We'll give our opinions, our takes on how both sides are handling. Make sure to always hit up totempolenation.com if you want some merch. That's scrolling in the ticker, as well as the Sideline Sports Network Denver account. If you're interested in more stuff like this video, their account on Twitter or details on season long, not just a one episode hit like this. Without further ado, let's get it.
Well, the Denver Broncos, I tell you something. Did we expect 2 years ago for the Denver Broncos to trade for Russell Wilson? No. I will say this before you get into some of the details and your thoughts. I think this is the worst trade in NFL history. Here's why I think it is. Now, I know they gave away a lot of players. They gave away Drew Lock and Noah Fant and a bunch of other guys as well. But who really won the trade? I think Seattle was really benefiting off this trade because last year Seattle made the playoffs, and this year they're still on their pace to make the playoffs, with a Drew Lock that's played well without Geno Smith. Not only that, Sean Payton came in out of retirement. I guess his system, he wants to run the Drew Brees system, obviously, in Denver, but it's not really working up to standards. Russell Wilson is an older quarterback. His stats are good, obviously. The stats are not really the issue. But if you really watch football, do you really think Russell Wilson was that good of a fit, even with Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach before he came along? No, it's not a very good fit. Also, there's a lot of money that's being involved. I mean, you have to pay that man. He's already guaranteed about $39 million. That's a lot of money. Even if he got hurt the final two games, which I do understand it from the business side, they will owe him like another $37 million if he got hurt in the final two games and blah 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 blah. For injury causes, and I do understand that, but it's like why? Why the contract so big? Now, it seems like the similar situation that happened with Derek Carr, but I think this is nowhere close to the situation of Derek Carr. It's two different coaches, two different organizations, and two different people that work there GM-wise. What are your thoughts on this Sean Payton, Russell Wilson? Did they ever click? And by the way, these things were actually going on before the bye week in October. So this is not something that just popped up, after the Patriots lost. This was going way, way back. And now that they lost to the Patriots, I guess it made things worse. What are your thoughts on this?
So just going back to the original trade, they, gave up, 2 firsts or something like that, Noah Fant and Drew Lock. And Obviously we've seen Drew Lock and Noah Fant come up big for the Seahawks in that 2-year span that trade has happened. Then you look and they gave another first-round pick or 2 to the Saints for Sean Payton's rights. So, that's 3 to 4 first-round picks to get this duo together. And as soon as the duo came together, and I'm not going to go as far as what Ryan Clark said today on First Take, saying that Sean Payton was acting like a thug. I don't know if that's the right word to use. But as soon as he came into the organization, he was just shitting on Russ. And that's an easy thing to do. I felt like that was low-hanging fruit to pick when, you're going off of Russ's worst year of his career the season before. So, yeah, it's easy to point fingers. But at the same time, this roster, for the most part, is the same roster that when Aaron Rodgers was up in the air whether or not he would be traded a couple years ago, the Broncos were the top spot, and everyone thought. Now, I'm not saying Russell Wilson is as good as Aaron Rodgers. He's not. But everyone thought that with Russ, damn, my phone is shaking so much. With Russ or with Aaron, this team is going to be a Super Bowl caliber team. And it just wasn't. And year one, yeah, you can blame it a little bit more on the offense. But this year, I mean, up until probably week 8, this was one of the worst defenses we'd seen in the past decade. Okay. And so, like, that's not on Russ. And then you draw comparisons to stats this year, and obviously stats don't tell the whole story, but he's playing comparable to Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, this is Pat's worst year, but he's very comparable to him. Jordan Love has turned up the second half of the season. Their stats are very similar. Like, there are quarterbacks that are just outside of the top 10 that I still think you would probably take Russ over this year. I don't know about building long-term wise, but like Russ, I feel like has redeemed himself for the most part from, the worst season that we've ever seen him play last year. And for Sean Payton, it just seems like as soon as he got there, he knew he didn't want Russ to be his guy, and maybe that's why the conversation started so early. But I mean, what did he say the first week that he was in there? He was talking shit about how Russ is, and whether you like it or not, I'm not the biggest fan of how Russ has acted publicly the past few years with, just he acts like a movie character, right? He doesn't act like a real life human being. It's robotic. It's weird. It all sounds planned and, everything like that. So I'm not knocking him for not liking the style that Russ had been going the past few years. But to go in there after a team that was already down a few first-round picks and then gave another couple for you to just completely tear down your franchise quarterback, who is going to get, like, I think $150 million out of this regardless. Like, obviously, if he finished out, he would have gotten more into, like, the 200 range of which he signed. But I'm 99% sure he's walking away from this with $150-ish million for 11 wins, which – is insane. So that's a reason I don't want to say that, like they're doing him dirty is because he won 11 games in 2 years and he's getting $150 million out of it. I don't feel bad for the man at all. But the way that Sean came in and handled it, knocking his quarterback down, publicly talking shit about him, I just didn't like it at all, and it's always easier to move a player than it is to move a coach. So I understand the logistics of it. It just makes more sense to move on from Russ than it would Sean. But I don't think that this is just a Russ issue. Sean Payton, as great as he is historically, future Hall of Famer, most likely we'll have to see because of the Bounty Gate stuff. But regardless, he's one of the best coaches of the past 2 decades, right? And he's come in here and it just hasn't seemed like that Sean Payton of old. Now, obviously, it's hard to compare the Saints team that he used to have to this current Broncos team. But to the same point I made a few minutes ago, this was a roster that was supposed to be a serious playoff contender with only the addition of a good quarterback. They added that quarterback. The team sucks. And now, obviously, they're competing were competing for that last seed in the AFC because everyone's beating up on each other. But, to put this all on Russ the way that Sean Payton seemingly has is just unfair. But in the same breath, I'll say that I don't feel bad for him because he is getting over $10 million per win, which is a little ridiculous when you're supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks in recent years. And Russ will most likely be a Hall of Famer at some point as well, right? Like, you can't tell the story of the evolution of the quarterback position, the evolution of the black quarterback position. Like Michael Vick is coming out with a documentary on that, and he's going to visit Russ and everything. Like, you can't tell the story of the NFL without Russell Wilson. So no knock on him. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. But these past 2 years have definitely lowered the I wouldn't say respect, but, expectations a little bit of what you think you're going to get out of Russ. So it's easier to point the finger at him. But I feel like, earlier this year with the worst defense of the past 10 years, allowing 70 points, the O-line wasn't doing as well. The wide receiver room would have one good game every, 3 games or something. It wasn't all Russ. That's my thoughts on it. I don't feel bad for anybody. because everyone's getting their money and they put themselves in this position. But it's just a little bit bullshit from Sean Payton's side to me.
I'm all about the players getting their money. It's the same thing when you're working a regular job. You make about $200,000 a year, and a boss comes to you and says, "Hey, do you mind taking a $50,000 pay cut so that you can hire a new person to make the same amount of money that you asked for the raise?" No, I'm all about players getting their money. I'm about all that stuff. I do respect that from a standpoint. I don't feel bad for Russ either. I do blame Stephon and Russ for putting himself in that situation. I understand that he wanted out of Seattle. Part of that was the offensive line wasn't really that great after the Super Bowl run, after the Legion of Boom left. I do understand that. But part of his fault is he really put himself in a bad situation. Now, Washington did want him. The Broncos wanted him. Maybe a few other teams wanted him.
The Bears wanted him.
The Bears wanted him too. So those teams at the time weren't great. The only teams out of those three were the Commanders or the Washington football team, because that year they made the playoffs with Taylor Heineke with a losing record, and they competed with the Bucks, obviously. But I think some of that is his fault. Could he have stayed in Seattle and made something work? I think so, but I think his patience ran out, of course, just due to the offensive line and lack of ability. But they were still making the playoffs. They didn't really miss the playoffs. They were just getting blown out by, I think, one of the losses they had to the Cowboys, one of the losses they had to a couple other teams, a couple competitive teams. So it wasn't like they were having losing seasons with Pete Carroll as one of the top tier coaches. They just made the playoffs and got stumped. Now, if he gets released in March, obviously, with that huge contract, I'm going to name about – I'm going to name about 16. No, I'm going to name 7, to be honest. Do you think he can possibly go to the Falcons just because of the Desmond Ridder situation? Desmond Ridder doesn't really fit what Atlanta's trying to do, and Arthur Smith's job could be on the line. And 2, the Giants you pay Daniel Jones all that money too, and you going with Tommy DeVito, Tyrod Taylor. How long can Tyrod Taylor stay healthy for? You know he has bad luck of injuries at times, but just with the Giants, Brian Daboll's job is probably on the line again after his second season. Was that Giants season last season when they made the playoffs defensively and with Daniel Jones' low career at 5 interceptions, was that a fluke? Third team, the Commanders. Let's say Ron Rivera does get fired at the end of the season, which he will, after that 27-0, being down. They almost came back and won, but you got a turnover-prone quarterback in Sam Howell. I understand that Eric Bieniemy is trying to revamp the offense. I understand that. And you got an older Jacoby Brissett who hasn't really did anything since his Indianapolis days. Let's say Eric Bieniemy's the head coach. Does he want to stick with Sam Howell, or does he want like a mobile type quarterback, maybe in Russ Wilson, kind of like the Pat Mahomes offense? Obviously, I'm not comparing those two quarterbacks, obviously, because they're different. I don't like the Patriots. I don't want Russ to go to no damn Patriots. I would prefer a younger quarterback, or I would prefer Zappy. That depends on if Belichick stays or leaves. We'll see about that. I don't think Russell Wilson's going to make much of a difference if he goes to the Patriots, but the Patriots do not like spending that money, and we do not want that type of contract because we pay our defensive players more than we pay our quarterback. The Steelers could be interesting. Kenny Pickett's not the answer. Mason Rudolph damn near ain't the answer. Who else? Oh, Mitch Trubisky damn near ain't the answer either. Plus, they fired the offensive coordinator. And, of course, the Raiders. The Raiders right now, they only have Aiden O'Connell at quarterback, so they don't really have a quarterback. Jimmy G, can he stay healthy? If Antonio Pierce moves on as the head coach going forward, does he want to keep Jimmy G? 7, the Bucks. Now, I know Baker Mayfield is playing well and efficient, and I understand that. But let's say the Bucks don't sign Baker Mayfield to a long term, depending on how they do in the playoffs or how they finish out the season. What are your thoughts on those 7 teams that he could possibly go to? What do you think is the best fit for Russell Wilson if he were to be signed on next season?
Yeah. So it's just which Russ are we going to get, right? Because even the last year in Seattle, he didn't play well. He didn't have good numbers there either. And then, just to start this with an answer to like what you started with, it fell apart in Seattle. Yes, because he was growing frustrated with that O-line, but you've listened to Pete Carroll, we listened to Marshawn Lynch. The guys up there just like they weren't gelling anymore. They weren't vibing at all. It was not a good energy around the team. It seemed like he had lost the trust of that team. Like the captain's patch on his jersey didn't really mean much anymore in Seattle. And I think that's one of the main catalysts of him getting out of there, as well as, frustrations with the roster. But he was looking for a trade a season before he got dealt to the Broncos, so yeah, I think that ship had sailed. I don't know if the Seahawks and him would have been anything past that last year that he was there. Now, starting with the Falcons and the Commanders, both of those squads have a ridiculous amount of cap space. So picking up what's left on Russ's deal wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Like if they were to transfer that dead cap from Denver, if they were to release him and transfer that dead cap over there, like they could eat that and they'd be fine. They wouldn't really be losing too much going forward and like money that they could use to build. So I'm not too opposed to the Commanders. Sam, I think Sam has the potential to be good at some point, but he sat behind, Taylor Heineke for a year, and Taylor's great, but he's an average quarterback, and I think Sam has the possibility of being above that, but like you mentioned, he's turnover happy. He holds on to the ball too long, and that's why he's the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. And he's gotten benched twice now for Jacoby Brissett, who then immediately comes in and does what? Throws like 200 yards in a quarter and a half, gets the ball to Terry more than Sam was at all. And, like Terry has had a down season this year, and it's really not his fault. A lot of it is on the quarterback play. So I think that the Commanders is a really good spot for him. Just, in mind that Bieniemy would be the head coach, and it would be centered around making sure the offense is efficient, which I think Russ can still lead an efficient offense, but the days of him putting up huge numbers are probably gone. Now the Falcons, they can do it with cap, but they've just been such a mediocre offense last year, this year. I mean, essentially since Arthur's been there, right? And it's not just a Ritter thing, because we saw it with Marcus last year as well, where they were winning games and they were like in contention to get that NFC South spot, which they obviously didn't get, but they had opportunities in like 17 to 14 games or 14 to 12 games, like those type of games. And that's really what we've seen from the Falcons. And I don't know if bringing in Russ changes anything there. Because, Desmond has some of the ugliest turnovers that we've ever seen, right? Like he's definitely had his time, and I think his time is up, but he's like same spot as Sam Howell. I think that he could eventually be a decent quarterback. It's just too early. He got thrown into the fire, and he was behind an average quarterback and really didn't get the guidance that maybe he should have gotten. And that's just me talking from the outside. I'm not talking shit about, Marcus Mariota or Taylor Heineke. But in this circumstance, I don't think he changes the Falcons offense too much, because their issue really is not getting the ball to London or Pitts or Bijan. Like they have 3 first-round all-pro caliber guys, maybe not this year, but in the near future, they could be all-pro caliber guys at that position or at those 3 positions. And they really just aren't giving the ball to them. So I don't know if Russ, who would lead probably a similarly scoring offense, would really change too much. But I don't hate the Falcons as an option. Who else did we bring up here? The Steelers, they've got to do something, man. Kind of similar, though, to my thoughts on the Falcons. I don't think that he makes this a 10-win team. I think that he goes there and they will – I think that they will continue to be a game above 500. You know, like I think that they would be 9-8 with him, and I think that he would have decent numbers. He's got a good run game going, and there's a couple good receivers, but we've seen Pickens and Deontay both publicly be very displeased with that situation. So who even knows what the skill position area is going to look like for the Steelers next year. But like I said, it's similar to the Falcons. I don't think that he turns this into a team that's scoring 25-plus points every week. I don't think that he turns it into a 10-win team. Who else? The Bucks are locked in with Baker. I've read a few things where Baker loves it there and they love him. The squad is around him and they view him as a leader, which is what he's been since really Texas Tech. He's always been a leader, and it's just been him getting that opportunity. And I think this is a spot where we could see Baker spend the next 5 years of his career. I think that it just works very well down there. So I don't see them moving on from Baker at all. Now,
the Giants.
The Giants is tricky because you are still having to pay Daniel Jones $40 million a year. So do you then pick up, and obviously you can move him, but that's just who's going to want to pick up Daniel Jones on $40 million a year? Probably nobody. Exactly. So that's not very realistic in my eyes. This road is rough picking up the phone. I don't think that if the Giants do move on from Danny, I think it would be with Tyrod for a year. I mean, we've talked about it on here 1,000 times. Tyrod Taylor is the most unlucky quarterback of all time. Had the job in Buffalo. They drafted Josh Allen after he led him to the playoffs. Loses his job there. Goes to the Browns. Has a starting job there. Gets a concussion. Baker comes in. Throws the rookie touchdown record. Loses his job there. Goes to the Texans. Texans do all right. He gets hurt there. Goes to the Chargers. Has the starting job at the Chargers. The team trainer punctures his lung with a needle. He's just the most unlucky guy in recent NFL history. So I think the Giants could roll with him placement if they don't want to stick with, because they've invested so much money in Jones that they're going to roll with him next year either way. And it's going to be, like you mentioned, Dable's job is going to be on the line. Saquon is already not happy, but he got his 1-year extension already to next year, so he'll be there for sure. Hyatt, we've seen do some good things, but he's kind of been quiet. Darren Waller has been hurt, and then when he's not hurt, he'll have one good game every 3 or 4 games or whatever. So the issues with the Giants definitely go a lot deeper than just the quarterback position. But I don't know if bringing in an expensive ass Russell Wilson is going to save anything there, you know. Who else did we list? You said the Patriots. I don't think the Patriots.
Yeah.
You don't. No,
I don't want him.
The Raiders.
I don't want him.
Yeah, I don't think that you should want him because it's the same thing I just said about the Falcons. It's the same thing I just said about the Steelers. Y'all are in a spot where, just one player, even if it is a quarterback, probably isn't fixing all of your issues, right? So why are you going to bring in points a game to scoring 18 points a game? You're not. I feel like he wouldn't actually give you the benefit that the amount of money he is going to be would like make it worth it. I don't think in y'all's offense specifically, same thing with the Steelers. I just don't think that it's a good matchup for either one of y'all. Now the Raiders, I think, is tricky because they have Jimmy G. I don't know how much is guaranteed, but I'm pretty sure they paid him $100 million on that contract. So, like, how quickly do you move off of it? Now, obviously, he didn't look good and he got benched, so they're ready to move off of it now. But it's the same thing with the money. It's just, do you expect a team? Now, I don't know about the Raiders cap situation. It should be wide open. They don't have anybody that's really getting paid like that. So,
Devontae Adams.
I mean, well, right, but that's one spot, and the cap is going up. So they're gonna have room. It's just like, do you want that much money when you could be building the team in, building not around O'Connell, obviously, but you could be putting together good pieces before you get O'Connell's eventual replacement. Do you want that much money allocated to a quarterback that's going to barely make your offense better? I don't think so. I wouldn't. Like, to be honest, I don't know what team in the league would actually want Russ to come, which sounds insane, given that, like
No,
how
I
we've always
agree
talked
with you,
about
but I
Russell
think his
Wilson, but
career
these
is
past
over.
few years, yeah, I don't know how many teams are actually going to want him as their quarterback for the next, 3 to 5 years. Like, I just don't, I couldn't see it now. And if you're like the Commanders or the Falcons or the Steelers, like I said, I think this just locks you into mediocrity if you get him. Now, maybe he has a renaissance and a resurgence, and he just comes back firing like he did in 2016 or whatever, but I don't see that being a very highly likely thing. So I think that those teams you listed are the options, but I think maybe two of them are legit. And even at that, I don't think that he makes those teams much better.
Mm. Well, it's sad to say, and I'm not a Russell Wilson hater, but I think his career is over. As of right now, if free agency or anything would have started today, it'd be very hard for these 7 teams to even want to sign him. I don't know why the Patriots even listed on there. We don't want an older quarterback. We don't want to pay that contract. Like I've already mentioned, we don't want to pay that big of a contract. We need more than just a quarterback. We need more receivers. We need to upgrade the old linemen. We need to bring some defensive guys that's on injury, and we need to build from scratch at this point.
Yeah.
This is not a Tom
So,
Brady thing where he just retired and then we need to win a Super Bowl. We need to build from scratch, from the bottom up. And we don't know if Belichick's going to be there next year, which I think will be stupid. Even though it's a little bit off topic, I think it's stupid. But if you were to bring in another coach for the Patriots, is it going to be Gerard Mayo, Bill O'Brien, or Mike Vrabel? Like, it could be a coaching change. And whoever the coaching change could be, they might not want Russell Wilson.
right. It's definitely going to be up to if there is a new coach, which I agree. I don't think that's the best move right now for y'all. Like, I really don't think coaching is the reason that you guys are losing when you're holding the opponents to, under 20 points in a lot of games. It's the offense. And that needs to be addressed first. Obviously, a quarterback would be great. But like you mentioned, that O-line needs some serious help. And O-linemen, breaking news, are expensive. That is an
Yes.
expensive position group to restock in. So, to the same extent, like, do you want to allocate that much money to a quarterback who's going to barely make your offense better when you have much more glaring needs? The answer is no. So, and like you said, like I used to be a really big Russ fan. I mean, he's from Richmond, like hometown kid. I was always cheering for him, even when he was with the Seahawks, and diehard Cowboys fan over here. I'm not wanting another NFC team to win, but obviously, I'm gonna cheer for him. So it sucked, these past few years to see how his, style has changed, his attitude, his personality. I like we said, 30 minutes ago at this point when we started the episode, it just seemed a little forced. It seemed like a robot. It just didn't seem like an actual human anymore. And I feel like that's why a lot of people lost their fandom with Russ. And that's what Sean was calling out at the beginning of the year. Whether it was rightfully so or not to do it publicly, I don't think it was. That should have been a man-to-man conversation between a head coach and his quarterback. But he went about it publicly, and he, talked about the quote-unquote bullshit that was going on with Russ and his character and everything like that. Now, do I think that Russ needed his own office? No. Do I think that his teammates need to go through his manager before they can even shoot him a text or a call? No. That's bullshit. Like, that's not what a leader should be doing. So that, to the same thing I just said, that definitely didn't make me excited to continue to be a Russell Wilson fan or supporter. And I just wish Sean went about it more privately than public. But Marshawn Lynch has come out and talked about it. So many people have come out and talked about just he's not really a leader anymore. And obviously his play is nowhere near what it used to be. So I don't know what the next step is for Russ, but things are pointing downwards, I would say. It's definitely not pointed up.
Well, sad and unfortunate, but this is it for Lambo Maxwell Sports. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to Total Pole Nation. And if you need your merch before the new year, all right, go to TotalPoleNation.com. Also, we want to thank Sideline Sports Network for the platform. And also, follow the Sideline Sports Network on X, Twitter, whatever you want to damn near call it. All right. So, like I said, we'll see where Russell Wilson's future comes after this NFL season. But this is it. Y'all have a great new year. We will be back on Monday for a recap of the national championship.